good and bad, or positive and negative, or light and dark, all of these kind of things are really just illusory phenomena. And illusory in the sense, not in the sense that they don't exist, but illusory in the sense that they're really not what they seem. Because if we can zoom out, if we can zoom back out from the details of any given situation, whether it's a very happy experience or a very upsetting, negative, destructive experience, if we can zoom out from that and get a more long-distance picture of it, then it becomes very easy to see that positive and negative are actually the same thing. They're actually part of the same thing. There isn't really any separation there at all. And the belief that there is separation is what causes immense suffering. And, we can basically try to identify with only the positive things in life and spend an awful lot of time and invest massive amounts of our energy in trying to avoid all negative experiences, negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative people. And we're just, seeking out the positive in life. And if we can do that, then we can eliminate, negativity from our lives and we can be happy. But this itself is a massive cause of suffering for people. It's probably one of the main causes of suffering for everybody, because positive and negative cannot exist without each other. We must, in order to feel true happiness, we need to feel stability, we need to feel balance, equilibrium, we need to feel peace. And the only way we can feel that and experience that is by unifying both sides of the whole, both illusory opposites of the whole. So really embracing the dark and the light and actually coming to the realization that they are basically two sides of the same coin. And the reason that I'm talking about this now is, I've talked about this before in other videos, but the reason why I bring it up now is because I've seen, both in person and online, between myself and others, and just observing others, a lot recently, there's been this really polarized and quite tense and quite destructive way of communication between people where, you're either on the light side, the positive side, the good side, or you're on the bad, negative, evil side. And this causes a lot of conflict and a lot of confrontation, and really it is just being caught up in the illusion of believing there's separation between these two factions of reality. I've spent so much time in my life previously being really exploring the depths of depression and anxiety and heartbreak and loneliness, and on many occasions actually really self-indulging and becoming, developing a lot of self-destructive tendencies and just a kind of nihilism, really. And ultimately that's very unsustainable, and, once my mental health began to fall apart and my physical health began to really deteriorate to the point where I was, really on the edge of death, pretty much. You realize that identifying with one aspect of reality only leads to immense suffering. It just compounds your ignorance and makes your life incredibly much more difficult, and everything in it is just so much more difficult to manage. And then on the other side of that spectrum, I've actually tried to pull myself out of the, that really heavy, dense and oppressive way of perceiving the world, and really try to, engage in positive thinking and healthy, uplifting experiences and uplifting, and anything that I could find that would support a happy frame of mind. And this can lead to something of an obsession towards positivity and light and happiness and cleanliness and And you see that a lot in the health movement as well. You know, people that are so obsessed with cleaning and becoming light and becoming, you know, ethereal and becoming very spiritually awakened, and they're trying to disassociate themselves from their own innate darkness, their own innate negativity, and rather than working with that and embracing that and not indulging in that, but just accepting that as an absolutely natural, necessary part of your complete wholeness, rather than accepting it and working with it, people begin to develop this real friction between the way they want to be and that side of themselves. And the more that we try to avoid that side of ourselves, the more power we give it, because those parts of ourselves desperately need our attention. They need our acknowledgement, they need our care, they need our love. And when we actually engage with these parts of ourselves and feed them the attention that they need, that they crave, then these parts of ourselves become much softer, much more pliable, much more workable, and much less threatening to our peace and to our stability. And again, you know, this whole process of exploration really brings us back to the unavoidable fact that so many of us are caught up in our minds, in the thoughts and the feelings and the contemplating of the past, and, you know, anticipating the future. And we can be so caught up in the activity of the mind that we begin to identify ourselves with that activity, with those thoughts. If we're having positive thoughts, that's because we're a positive person. You know, I'm a positive person because I have positive thoughts. Or I'm having very self-destructive, negative, suicidal thoughts, and therefore I'm a very negative, depressed person. And by realizing that each end of the spectrum is part of the same whole and everything in between it, we can really start to understand that the thoughts and feelings that we're experiencing in the mind are just the natural activity of the mind. They're the emanations of the mind, the expressions of the mind, but they're not the mind. They're not the mind itself. The mind itself is actually an expansive, infinitely expansive, spacious, completely still, completely calm domain. And that is the place where we experience true peace. That's the place where we experience genuine happiness, because there's an absence of light and dark. There's an absence of positive and negative, good and bad, black and white, right and wrong. All of these things are perceived for what they really are. They're just illusory phenomena that naturally arise and naturally dissipate if we allow them to. The only thing that feeds these thoughts and these feelings and that actually allows them to have any kind of control over our behavior and over the way we're feeling is if we actually follow them, we cling on to them, we attach ourselves to them, we identify ourselves with them, and we follow them to the bitter end, which is just propagating ignorance and suffering in the long run. So through the practice of meditation, ultimately, we can train our minds, we can train ourselves to uncover that stillness that is the innate quality of the mind. And by identifying with that innate spaciousness, we can really begin to experience that and begin to reside there more often. And through this practice, we can definitely learn how to cultivate more mindfulness and awareness, essentially. But with mindfulness and with awareness and with this experiencing of the mind's natural spaciousness, we really begin to create more room for insight to develop. And with insight comes wisdom. So by cultivating mindfulness and by cultivating awareness, you know, insight and wisdom are really just the natural byproducts of that practice. And so anything that we are faced with in life, any kind of difficult circumstances or challenging experiences of any kind, we can frame these experiences in the perspective of this bigger picture, this spaciousness of the mind and this innate peace that we all have within us. So ultimately the point is, positive and negative, yes, they exist. Yes, they have certain qualities to them. Yes, they feel a certain way. But it's really the task of our human existence now to actually put these experiences in a broader perspective, and therefore we can actually make a lot of progress down our individual and collective paths. Because when we approach things from this perspective of non-duality, we're actually much less likely to be avoiding things, to be avoiding or trying to escape from negative experiences, negative thoughts, negative feelings. We're much less likely to be seeking out and chasing and clinging onto and attaching ourselves to positive thinking and positive experiences and, happiness and goodness and lightness. And we're actually cultivating our ability to recognize the mind's natural, innate resting state, that peaceful clarity, that spaciousness of the mind. And as we begin to recognize that, we begin to spend more time there. We become more and more familiar with it. And from that place, from that perspective, we can really frame both ends of the spectrum within one whole picture and actually understand how we suffer. We're either avoiding suffering or we're chasing after not suffering. But the thing is, it's not possible. We can never avoid suffering. Suffering is an innate part of being alive, of being human. So it's not possible to avoid it. It's not possible to be happy all the time either. We must have the full range of human experiences in order to be fully human. But what we can do is cultivate our ability to see all of these different experiences and different feelings and different qualities for what they essentially are, and not be completely caught up in the illusion of their concreteness, of the realness of these experiences. We can actually see that they are complementary, and we can really develop through the practice of meditation our ability to be much less impacted and much less affected by all of these experiences, whether they're good or bad. Now, I'm by no means saying that I've got all of this figured out at all, but this is definitely something that has been my experience over, many years now, and, I still get very much affected, and sometimes it can be very intense, by certain experiences, good or bad. But my ability to actually see things with more clarity and my ability to understand a bit more about how things work and to regulate my own mood and my own emotions and my own feeling states and actually understand more my own mind and become more familiar with my own mind and understand myself at a much deeper level. These things have definitely been unfolding for me over the course of time. So really, I'm just sharing with you my experience. I'm not trying to sound like I know it all or I've got it all figured out, because that's absolutely not the case remotely. But ultimately, what this involves is having a consistent practice, which can be quite difficult to actually, be organized enough to do that. But mindfulness and awareness cultivating meditation, despite what a lot of people claim, it really isn't about sitting down and blissing out and just having a very peaceful, calm, happy time, and when you've finished you go back into the world and the world's a much, much better place, It can be a lot like hard manual labour in order to even witness that calmness that we all have within us. It can actually be extremely hard work and very difficult, and a lot of people do give up on the practice of meditation before they actually really experience that kind of innate clarity and peace within them, because it is just such, it can be quite not really stressful, but when people actually coming face to face with themselves in this way for the first time, they realize actually how noisy their minds are and what little control they have over the activity of the mind. And that can be quite disheartening for people, and a lot of people say, oh, I can't meditate, and they just give up. which is really unfortunate, but these people often tend to keep coming back to the practice of meditation. So it's definitely a case of uncovering that quality within you over the course of time, over consistent practice. And once you begin to feel that quality within you, you recognize it, you experience it, and you know that it's there. And that becomes a very good, strong motivation to continue with a meditation practice. And over the course of time, as you become more familiar with your mind and you work with it more at a deeper level, then you can begin to extend the amount of time that you can actually reside in this innate spaciousness and peaceful quality of the mind's natural resting state. So yeah, that's my experience and my views on the difference between, you know, happiness and sadness, positive and negative, good and bad, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'll revisit this topic probably in a more practical nature in future videos.